Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much for taking the time out from your Saturday afternoon to listen to me talking about Google G Suite, I should say, sorry, for education and using it as a tool for whole school improvement. My name's Mark Turvey. I'll apologise in advance. I'm just coming out of the back end of a very heavy cold, so I might be a little bit croaky and I might sort of break down into a coughing fit at any minute. So thank yourself. Lucky that it's not a face-to-face conversation, otherwise it might not be very pleasant. Yeah, so I'm going to sort of talk to you a little bit about give you some context around the school that I work at, school called University Academy Keighley, where we're at and how we use Google and what we do and how we've used it as a platform for whole school improvement. And then I'm going to talk about the impact that we've seen that having both in the classroom and in terms of results and outcomes. So in terms of who we are, we're a secondary school and sixth form, so 11 to 18 provider based in the northwest of England, in a town on the outskirts of Bradford. Very high levels of deprivation in the community that we serve. Raise Online put us as within the 80th percentile of deprivation index. So we've got a lot of students on free school meals, a lot of students eligible for the pupil premium. So it's a very kind of economically deprived community that we serve, and obviously that brings with it its own set of challenges, excuse me. Last time we were Ofsted in April 2015, and we were judged as having notice to improve. We were kind of requires improvement for teaching and learning, behaviour and safety and leadership, but our outcomes had seen 2 years of quite drastic fall, so our outcomes were very poor. So there's a real need in school for us to raise outcomes and improve the quality of teaching and learning, to sort of improve the standards across the whole school. And as a school, we've kind of utilised G Suite and Chromebooks as a tool to kind of make that happen. In terms of how we use Chromebooks in school, we are one-to-one with devices. So every student that comes onto our role has their own Chromebook, and all staff have them as well. And we use kind of Google Apps as our sort of fully integrated IT solution across the whole site. So every student has Gmail, every student has a Drive. We try and avoid using any other sort of infrastructure. We use docs, sheets, sites, forms. It's all the whole sort of way that the school runs is using that kind of Google infrastructure. And currently we don't actually charge the students for the devices when they come in. Partly that's because, as I mentioned before, we have a high level of deprivation. We have a lot of students eligible for the pupil premium, and one of the ways that we use our pupil premium funding is to fund giving the students that resource to remove any barriers to learning that they may have, and to sort of allow access for all, which is a really important thing. We do charge ad hoc for if students break it and things like that, but at the moment we don't charge. Obviously, I know there are other models of funding that, but that's how we've chosen to manage that. In terms of why we do this, I just want to very briefly touch on, like I say, we have serve a very deprived community, and I feel as an educator we have a moral imperative to provide the best possible resource that we can for our students, and it seemed like a really effective way to do that for our learners, in terms of providing them with access to high quality resources all the time. So it's a real sort of moral thing that we do in not charging them and giving them that resource. It's innovative and it's exciting. I think it has hooked a lot of students in. It has supported engagement. It's really exciting, and it sends a really powerful message to the wider community, not just our local community, but sort of wider area, about what we are as a school and how much we value and trust our learners, that we're willing to give them this resource for free. I think that's a really important message, and it makes the students feel valued. And in terms of kind of aspiration and engagement in education, I think that's really important. And ultimately we are using it as a school as the platform on which to build sort of outstanding practice and become a good and outstanding school. And I should say now, and I'll say this again later, that a lot of the things that I'm talking about in terms of improving teaching and learning, and things like using it to support differentiation and support access for all and things like that, these aren't kind of new or sort of googly concepts, if you will. You don't need Chromebooks to differentiate your lesson. However, what we found is that using Chromebooks makes differentiation easier and better, and it's actually using it as a tool to kind of make those processes that you might go through anyway to raise standards in a school efficient and easy and more engaging for people. And that we've had big wins in terms of doing simple things really, really well. I've talked previously, and I talked this last year about the kind of process of rolling out Chromebooks, and I don't really want to go into that again, but just as a very broad overview, we've been one-to-one for about 18 months now. We rolled out devices to students in April 2015. So obviously that was a huge process for us. It was a massive sea change in the school. There wasn't really any sort of strong IT infrastructure. It was third party and it was not very well managed. So it was a big sea change, and that was a huge process. There was a lot of things that we went through in terms of making sure that everyone was engaged and getting buy-in from people, in terms of stakeholder engagement, getting staff on board, governors on board, parents on board. And I've talked previously about this, and I don't want to go into it in too much detail, but in terms of whole school improvement, in terms of using this as a tool, getting that buy-in from people at the start is really, really powerful, because you need them on side as you try and move forward and use it to impact, and particularly on teaching and learning, which is what I'm going to get onto in a second. But we've did a lot of work around training and buy-in to try and make sure that people felt sort of confident and excited about using Chromebooks to kind of drive up those standards in the classroom. And it's that taking some time to do that is really, really important. Before you even get onto the sort of how, it's the kind of the what and why we're doing this, and getting people on side and getting them to understand that it is kind of a way to do that in a way that makes their lives a little bit easier. So really the focus now of the talk is going to be around teaching and learning, and how we've used Chromebooks to kind of try and develop and raise standards in teaching and learning in the classroom. We've tried, I should say, to not be too prescriptive about it in terms of you have to use Chromebooks, you have to use Google G Suite, you have to use whatever. But however, what we have done is shown staff that if you use it in this way, these are the benefits that it will have. To do that, we've very much focused on the SAMR model of using ICT in the classroom, technology in the classroom. It's a model that some people might be familiar with. I could talk about it for ages. Just to give you a very broad overview, it's a way of using technology in your practice, and it kind of goes in 4 stages, starting at substitution, where you take something that you would do in a lesson, maybe on paper, say a worksheet, and rather than giving them the physical copy, you would substitute that with a digital copy. That would be substitution. It moves up through augmentation, and then into modification and redefinition, which is where you're redefining and changing and adapting your lesson planning and your classroom practice based on the technology that you have at hand. And the further you move up the steps, the more impact it has on the learning of the pupils. That's how the sort of model works. So we've really sort of used that model as a framework for staff to think about how they're going to use G Suite and how they're going to use Chromebooks to impact on their classroom practice. We did that very much at a faculty level, and we appointed like a Google champion in every single faculty that was responsible for leading that process within their faculty. And we've got faculties to kind of regularly think about where they are on the steps and what do they need to do to move on to the next steps. And different faculties are at different places on that journey, and we've really stressed the staff that it is a journey. We're not expecting them to sort of do sort of giant leaps. It's baby steps. You know, you might start off, I mean, everyone started off at substitution, obviously, because it was new. Some people progressed to modification and redefinition very quickly, and other faculties are maybe still on substitution and augmentation, but they're kind of getting there. But what we've tried to do is do a lot of sharing of good practice. So, you know, if this faculty is on modification and this faculty is on augmentation, we get them to sort of work together to try and improve that dialogue and build that process. We've tried really, really hard to focus on keeping it simple in the classroom. I think when you initially say, we sort of talk to people about, and this goes back to getting buy-in from people, using, you know, every student's going to have a Chromebook, we're going to use G Suite, it's going to be in the cloud and the sharing and all that kind of stuff. There's a kind of fear about making things overly complicated, and actually a lot of the stuff that we've done and a lot of the ways that we've used it have been pretty simple and pretty straightforward. But actually on a day-to-day basis, excuse me, in terms of progress over time, those are the things that we've seen that have had the impact. You know, it's lovely to break out the Google Cardboards and to get expeditions going and get them to do all that kind of VR stuff, and things like that are absolutely fantastic experiences for the students. And, you know, there is massive amount of value in doing that. You know, we've had expeditions in, it's been great. I absolutely loved it. We had a fantastic day. However, the things that make a difference day in, day out, in terms of in the classroom, in terms of teaching, are the really kind of simple little changes that really sort of help staff to and students to learn and staff to teach. And that's what we focused on, is the simple, easy wins. In terms of, I'm kind of going to go through the modeling stages and how we've kind of managed it. So starting off with substitution and augmentation, on the sort of SAMA model, the idea is that those two stages kind of, you can, when you do those changes, the impact on the students is less than it is at the higher end for the modification and the redefinition. However, what we have found is that for staff particularly, when they start to substitute and augment their processes using G Suite, what that does is it saves them time and it makes their practice more efficient. And then it buys them the time to think about doing the other things. So if you think about the three areas of teaching, if you think about planning, marking and teaching, what we found is that, just bear with me a second, a bit of a technical hitch there. There we go, sorted. Sorry about that. What we found is that the time saved, if staff use it effectively and if staff are using it well, they're spending less time planning, they're spending less time marking, and they're spending more time on the teaching side of their practice, which is the side that impacts on learners' progress. And I kind of, there's lots and lots of examples and ways that I could go into it, but I kind of just want to give you a broad overview because I appreciate we've not got a massive amount of time. I could give you lots of concrete examples and I'm happy to share with people concrete things that we've done, but just things like in terms of sharing documents rather than printing them out. A member of staff I was talking to the other day said that if they'd have delivered the lesson that they were delivering that day, and they had to print the resources that they'd shared, they would have had to print about 90 pages per student, which is a bit excessive, and that's probably not standard. But equally, the time that staff used to spend printing and resources and in the queue for the copier and all that kind of stuff, we've cut a lot of that time out because staff are just sharing resources with students, and that saves like a huge amount of time. And I know it sounds like, and it's such a little simple thing, but the time that saves staff means that they can focus on other areas. And then in addition to that, things like staff used to spend ages, or certain staff used to spend ages doing card sort activities, as an example, which is, you know, a fantastic way to, you know, help students learn. But you would have to print the card sort, laminate it, cut it up, put the cards in the envelope, give it to the students. The students made a mess of it. You had to sort it all out, and that was a huge, you know, that one activity would take staff quite a lot of time. Whereas if you share that document with students with the cards as text boxes for them to move around, it takes absolutely no time at all. If you use Classroom, you can share it out to the students, you know, through that, or there's other means of doing that. But just that little simple thing of taking something that you do as a paper process that takes a lot of time and making it electronic, all of a sudden you're buying yourself all this time to think about all this other stuff. Similarly, in terms of marking and assessment, you know, forms has been like a huge win for us in terms of saving staff time in terms of assessing pupil progress. There are sort of two sides to that, I think. I mean, there's lots of add-ons you can get that help sort of mark the work for you. So it saves time in the sense that staff aren't having to mark 30 quizzes, for example, at the end of a lesson or halfway through a lesson. But what it also does is it gives that feedback instantly. So staff are using forms to check miscomprehensions in a lesson, or to benchmark progress, or to look at gaps in learning, and it's a much more sort of live interactive process. So as well as saving staff the time, they're not having to mark all those bits of work, it's actually sort of having a positive impact, and that's when you start to get into that kind of augmentation, redefinition and modification. So it's really kind of using those tools, and again, they're tools, it's not anything additional to outside of G Suite. It's simple stuff. You know, it takes a bit of time to create that form. It maybe takes a bit of time to set up if you use Super Quiz or whatever to mark it. There's various add-ons you can get that give you feedback, but actually the benefit of that is massive for just that one simple process. It saves you time and it's more beneficial in the classroom. And also we found that the pace of lessons when we're using Chromebooks and we're using G Suite in the classroom, the pace has got quicker. So you're getting through more content, if you will, or more, you know, more through your scheme of work faster. Someone in our RE department said that they were getting through 2 lessons in one using the Chromebooks and using G Suite, as opposed to the sort of maybe the older way of doing things where it was very sort of paper-based and physical. So just that pace, and that's like a massive massive win for us in terms of getting through the scheme of work and having time to recap and review and maybe go back and address gaps and all that kind of stuff. So that pace has been a real big win for us. So the staff that have kind of used it effectively in a sort of nuts and bolts kind of admin kind of sense are now finding that they're actually really starting to use it in a way that does kind of, you know, modify or redefine the way that they practice in the classroom. The kind of key sort of areas that we've seen success, I think, are collaborative learning and students working together. Just, you know, there's always been the capacity for students to work together and collaborate, but actually the scope for that has improved greatly in terms of things like one of the things that we've seen used really well is Google Sites. Our A-level media group worked together to create a series of sites, which they then used as like the course outline, revision guide, revision plan, and that was really effective. They each took a topic, they shared and worked together to create a set of links and sites to support each other in learning, and that was like a really powerful way to learn. So just that, you know, collaboration's always been there, but actually using sharing, letting the students have that communication and that ability to work in groups and share resources electronically has just made that something that we could have done anyway easier and more powerful. In terms of fostering independence, it's been fantastic for making our learners much more independent. We struggled a little bit, I think, with independent learning, and all of a sudden now, you know, the students have got the resources that they need at their fingertips to be independent. So in terms of finding things out for themselves, like, sir, I don't know this, okay, Google it. You know, you've got the resource to go and look it up yourself. We're not always, doesn't have to be teacher led. You're giving the students the ability to be independent. And that's not just in the classroom, that's outside the classroom as well. So, you know, homework, and I'm going to get on to, we did a lot of work with year 11 on exam prep, which I'm going to get into in a second. But yeah, just that ability for them to just do things themselves. They've got everything that they need to do it. We've removed those barriers for them to go and find stuff out themselves. And the other area that's been a real strength is sort of differentiation and extending learning. One of our members, or a few members of staff, have started using a system where they share all the resources with all the students. And then they get the students to start at the top rather than at the bottom in terms of differentiation. So previously what you might have done in the class is had some students over here that were targeted a C maybe, and some students over there that you were wanting to get a B, and you would give the students some sort of work that was pitched appropriately to them, and some students over there the work that was pitched appropriately to them. That kind of, I guess, could potentially create a bit of a glass ceiling. You're teaching them up to here. You're saying, right, this student needs to get a C, so I'm going to teach them up to a C. What we started doing is sharing all that resource with all the students and saying, right, start at the A, and if you can't do that, move down, and then if you can't do that, but rather than sort of stopping them getting up here, we're kind of allowing them to have access to everything. And obviously that helps then as well in terms of stretching and challenging learners and extending learning. So if students have completed the C grade work, for argument's sake, or the work that's around that level, or I should say a 4 or 5 now, I suppose, shouldn't I really? But if they've completed that task, there's nothing to stop them accessing the work that's at the next level. And again, that's not complicated. It's not, you know, any reinventing the wheel particularly, but it's just something that is easier to do when you've got you're not having to print an extra resource, or you're just sharing it all with them and giving them the access to that information. It just makes things a lot easier. And equally, again, with stretching the most able in terms of kind of pushing them on and extending their learning, in terms of you've just got, there's so much scope to kind of for them to do things that is easy. It's not sort of a huge amount of work for a member of staff to just get them to extend their learning slightly. Like I say, I've got lots and lots of concrete examples of ways that we've done that I'm more than happy to share with people, but I'm conscious of time. So in terms of kind of impact, we're kind of really starting now to see sort of the impact of that. We're starting to see pockets of good and outstanding practice that have kind of emerged across the school. And we know that the teachers that use it effectively are consistently judged as good and outstanding. Now, that's not to say that without it, those teachers wouldn't be good and outstanding. I'm sure they're good and outstanding teachers anyway. However, we know that they're using it to make their practice seem easier. We have had some external verification in terms of we had Ofsted sort of our Ofsted report praised the use of innovative resources. They very specifically mentioned that. And we also had a local authority monitoring visit that said it was the best use of ICT they'd ever seen in a lesson. And I suppose ultimately we want to use it to impact on our results and our outcomes. And so 2016 was the first year where we had full year of year 11 having this resources, and actually our results in 2016 went up 100% for students getting A stars to C in both English and maths. So our achievement doubled from 2015 to 2016, which is a massive thing for us, really. And also our progress 8 score shot up. So previously we were nearly minus 0.6, so we're below baseline for that. And this year we're looking to come in at plus 0.05. So we've gone from below floor target into positive progress. And we've also previously had issues with gaps between disadvantaged and undisadvantaged learners, and those gaps have disappeared. So when I kind of go back to the slide at the start about moral purpose, we're kind of, we are removing those barriers, and that's kind of helping us to get rid of that difference that we had before. So we are, starting to see like a real impact in terms of our outcomes. Now, I'm not for a second suggesting that using G Suite is the only reason that the school's improved. I know there are lots and lots of factors in that. However, looking at the results, and I've spoken to Chris, who's the person who's our TLR for teaching and learning with Google, and he was happy for me to share his personal results of his classes with everyone. So his GCSE groups, he teaches citizenship, and his A star to C went up 36% from 2015 to 2016, and the percentage of students making expected progress improved by 28%. So it just, for him, he said that he uses it regularly all the time. It's part of it. It's embedded in his teaching and in his practice. And he's seen, not only huge improvements in his results, but also sort of a massive improvement in his work-life balance. Because, like I said before, it's taking him less time to do things, and he's doing them better. So we are really starting to see it have a huge impact and a huge benefit in school. I'm not suggesting for a second that it's all been plain sailing. There are issues. We do have pockets of staff that still don't want to engage with it. We still have pockets of students who, don't treat their devices very well and break them and all that kind of stuff. There are problems with it. Just like there is with anything, there's no sort of perfect solution. But I think, for me, I can very clearly see that using it has had a massive impact in the way that the students learn, in the way that the teachers teach, and in the way that the school kind of runs as well. I mean, one of the things I've focused very much on improvement in teaching, but actually there's been massive wins in terms of just the general admin and running of the school as well. Just thinking about the other day, actually, about the options process in school, which used to be print off the forms, hand out the forms out. The kids lose the forms, you reprint the forms, they hand them in, someone has to enter them on the database and whatever. Now we just send out a Google form and the kids just do it, and we get it all in a spreadsheet and we're good to go. So just that one process has sort of changed from a huge admin headache to something that is pretty streamlined and pretty straightforward. So yeah, it has, for all the, there have been speed bumps in the road, but actually it has had a really massive impact. And like I say, in terms of time, I've kind of done a very high level, broad overview of what we've done there, but I'm more than happy if anyone wants to get in touch to go into sort of more detail about the things that we've done in school to kind of have that impact around teaching in the classroom. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for listening. Like I say, if you've got any questions, I think my email is on the website or on the end of the slides that I've shared. So please get in touch. I'm happy to have a further conversation, and thank you very much.